So yeah, I think I just wanted to do a kind of quick video, a quick talk on the self and why this is so important. Philosophically, it's important, but it's more than that because I think very few people realize and very few people question, what is the self, right? And I think if you ask yourself this question, what is the self? I would I would probably guess that you would, say about two answers before you get to something that you don't even understand what the self is. And yet we've constructed personalities from the self, certain identities, certain labels, certain even, culture identities as well, kind of all rooting back from the self and the history of the self. And this is so dangerous in terms of not understanding what the self is, right? We sort of just started adding things to this self, right? This just very ambiguous self. And we don't even know what it is, right? And yet we go through our day-to-day lives without questioning it, without really sitting in reflection with it. And we just make it concrete, right? We just, without question, it's real, it's there, it's without question. But just imagine how, okay, I won't even go there. Actually, I'll go about it another way. I will kind of talk about the history of philosophy here for just a little bit. So, to kind of go into the direction of the Greeks and on the Western side of thinking, it kind of begins with Parmenides, and Parmenides talks about being, right? That there's just this being, this one being. But I think it gets really, and ever since then we've been concerned with being. And to kind of simplify it, I don't want to simplify it to the self, but to kind of make it, I guess, understandable for those that are not used to the term being. I could also use existence, but perhaps let's just use self to kind of make it more impactful. And, philosophy has been trying to solve for a very long time what the self is. What is exactly the self? And when you start really, really digging into this question, it's like everything else becomes unnecessary, or it's like everything else just kind of melts into insanity because we've built literal civilizations, societies, cultures, politics, identities, labels, classifications, rooting from the self, and we don't even know what that is. right? and and it's and and we're all in this, we've put ourselves in this disorder and destruction and fight against each other and do all these things, and yet we don't even know what the self is. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely insane when you actually look at it. When you actually look at the foundation of something, right? Everything we've constructed, everything we've built around this one thing that we don't even know what it is. Right? We've kind of we went with an interpretation and we just never questioned it from there on, right? And we've built so much out of it, and yet it's the most intimate thing to us, this self, right? This experience of the quote I quote, and yet we don't even know what that is, right? This I. What is this I? This individual I, the part of the I am. What is it? And to kind of give more practical examples, when you're in a group and someone says, okay, tell us about yourself, right? Tell us who you are. All we ever do is describe things, right? But we're still never saying who we are. And if you're still not grasping what I'm saying, I guess I'll make it a little bit more digestible in terms of this. So let's say I just give you a description of me, right? I work at this restaurant, and I have a brother, and I have a mom, and I like reading, and I watch certain TV shows, I like certain music, I affiliate with this certain political party, I don't like certain people, I don't like certain things, and so on, right? But here's the question. Does that actually tell you who I am? And the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of those things that I just said there's nothing that really distinguishes me from anybody else, right? There's plenty of people that work in restaurants. There's plenty of people that like some of the shows that I like. There's plenty of people around that don't like the people that I don't like. There's plenty of people that like the music that I like. And so what is this? Who am I? And it's funny because we use all these labels and descriptions, yet they are the most universal descriptions, right? You could say, well, I have webbed toes, okay, but you know for a fact there are people out there with webbed toes. So it's like, again, there's still nothing that is absolutely like not universal. I find it very hard to sort of find like what it really means to be an individual in this case, right? And so when we talk about what is the self, almost everything anybody will give in their descriptions of themselves are attributes that other people have, are things that other people do as well, things that other people like as well. And of course, when I say that, it's not everybody. And when I say universal, I mean that there's people out there around the world that like like some of the things you do, and like some of the things that you don't like, and also do some of the jobs that you do, and so on, and like some of the same humor that you do, and yet you still haven't told me who you are, right? Because all you are describing to me are things you do. And yeah, things you do. But is it who you are? And I kind of really want to stress this. Is this who you are? And I think we've somehow equated the things we do and the things that we don't do, and the containers that we shove ourselves in terms of certain groups and labels and classifications, and we conflate and we say, this is who I am. Yet, all those people are also in the same container as you. Because clearly you can't even escape the universal containers, meaning like you could tell me, well, I'm a I don't label anything, right? I don't go by labels, right? You could say that, right? But the thing is, I know for sure there's people on this planet that also don't go by labels because they want to reject everything, right? So again, you would be stuffed into that sort of paradoxical container. Even if you choose to reject everything, you will be in the container of everybody that rejects everything. So we're still stuck at a standstill with what is this self and who are you? Like, really, who are you? And I think we've really conflated the things we do with being who we are. And the problem with this, and the problem with taking up those kind of activities and those labels, is that when those activities are stripped away from you, when those labels are stripped away from you, what do you have left? Right? If you were to give me every description that you could ever give of yourself, and if I were to strip those away one day, right? And then approach you and say, who are you? What would you say? And it's this very hard thing. And I hope it's something that we can really think about, because the problem of philosophy has been always trying to solve, what is being? And I'll just sort of use it to make it more relevant to yourself, is that what is this self, right? What is this self? And if we can't answer that question, right? And this is the whole point of my talk here, is that if we can't answer this question with certainty, with confidence, then everything we've built, personalities, labels, classifications, all these objectifications to ourselves, are illusions. Why? Because you can't answer the most primordial question, which is, what is this self? Right? What is this I? I mean, really think about it, right? You are thrusted into existence, right? And then as a child, you're taught to express yourself in English, and the very first encounter with this I is through language, right? It's through language that you first encounter this I. And then you're given a name, right? But does a name equate to a self? Right? Have we also conflated that? Right? And clearly not all names have a self, right? If I say if I say the title of a book, right? Or if I look at this object and name it and I say book, does it have a self? Right? And we'll say, no, it doesn't have a self. And I look at this, square screen that shows me TV shows. I say, that's a television. And I name it, but does it have a self? So clearly not all names have a self. But I want to prod this even further. Is it possible that actually having a name doesn't mean there is a self, doesn't mean there's necessarily a self at all? Right? I'd rather accept this proposition than saying that there are some names that have a self and some names that don't. I'd rather accept the proposition that says it might be the case that names cannot indicate any self. And this is obviously, I guess, like life-shattering. I wouldn't know how else to put it. Because we've always accepted that the self is given. But see, that's the problem. When things are assumed as a given, those are the things that we have to question the most. Things like existence, things like the self. And these things are scary to question because we could probably go about 2 thoughts deep before we realize that we really don't know anything about the self. And we really don't know anything about what is existence. And all the phenomena that comes into its revealing, right? So I hope this is definitely kind of thought-provoking in some beneficial manner. That was my intent. I may not have explained it well and have fallen short and also made horrible assumptions. It's possible. It's very possible. But I hope that I've made the message clear and that at the end of the day, it's still something worth thinking about and so on. And yeah. All right. See you guys later.